Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening to Chad.
Hi,
and
Chad.
Paulie, good evening to those
Yes,
joining us.
Thank you for everyone who's joined. Thank you for last week, and I see some returning faces or faces in comments and stuff. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Whether you comment or you're watching, your support is well valued. And we've got Chad, a very special guest that I'll let Paul and Angie introduce. As you know Chad very well.
Yep. So really, this evening is all about the small stuff. It's about the plankton, the very beginning of all of those animals that we keep in our little glass boxes. Of course, we'd have none of them whatsoever if it wasn't about the plankton. And of course, tonight we have probably the greatest person that I certainly know to call, as I whether rightly or wrongly, I called him the Plankton King, which I think is which I sort of think is pretty true. I don't know too many people that know about plankton like you do, Chad.
Yeah.
We were. I was going to start actually. If there are people watching that have any questions, you might be breeding clownfish. You might be just interested in how to feed your corals and the different micron sizes of some of the foods that are applicable to certain animals and things like that. By all means, please put questions in the chat, and Paul will no doubt dig out those questions later on. Yeah. But I think initially, shall we just go to the chat and welcome those that have joined us, Paul?
Yes, because it took about 20 minutes before we got to the chat last week. So thank you very much for those people joined. So first is Johnny Boy. Good evening, John.
Hello, John.
Gandalf the Grey, welcome back. I know you was with us last week. Tekker's Reefer. How are you?
Hi, Tekers. I was having a chat with him this week. I can't remember what it was about, but he was on our Instagram chat, I believe. Yeah. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt. How you doing? Matt. Good to see you. Dan's Reef.
Hi, Dan's
Good
Reef.
evening to you. I think most people said hello to so far. We'll come into Love to Reef. So thank you very much.
Good.
Just going...
What's that one there? The Barbate. What's that there? Evening, Neil. What's that one there?
Where's that one?
What's that one there?
That one.
Where? What's that?
Oh,
someone's in Barbados, you lucky what's it, whoever's in Barbados. I wish I was there.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's the offshore reefer only.
Oh, look. Yeah, hi, Matt. You're good.
He's in Aberdeen.
Yeah, in Aberdeen. Yeah. Who else we got?
East Coast Reefer.
Hi, Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Thank you very much. Last weekend, Steve come down to AAC last weekend with his new Abyss flow cannon holder.
Yes.
He's currently just making a few tweaks, a few changes.
I saw
to
that because you've got one and Rob's got one, haven't you?
Yeah. You seen that yet, Chad? Have you seen the new AFC cannon from Abyss?
No, I haven't yet. No.
Oh my God, it's like a Ferrari pump, Chad. I think he's actually over in the States right now, Abyss, and they're showcasing some of their products over there now. But stunning,
And what is it? The wattage on it? It's a big old pump for a low amount of wattage.
I can do 1,000 litre proper wave, Chad, proper tipping wave like this with one little pump that's this big, about 40 watts of electric. It's one of the most fuel efficient pumps ever. But as we said last week, with a bit of a laugh, they are £3,150.
And that's the smallest
and that's the small one. So I should save the electricity around about 2049 when I'm dead. When I'm dead, basically I would have saved all the electric. But
it makes that a moot point, really, isn't it? If you've got to pay over £3,000 for the pump, it's only 45 watts.
But honestly, Chad, it's so efficient. They're even using them in places now that only run on solar, out in the Red Sea, for example, rearing clams and that sort of thing, where electricity is the main issue in island locations and things like that. So
the only downside is it's got an orange cable, hasn't it?
Don't mention it.
Yes, yes.
Am I not supposed to mention that?
Apparently, you can only get orange. The cable is so saltwater resistant. It's the sort of thing you would use around oil rigs and things like that. So But it's I think it's about £100 a metre, Chad. About $120 a metre, the cable
And
alone.
it only comes in orange.
And it only comes in orange,
okay.
unfortunately. So I'll have to hide it well in the reef, otherwise it'll stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, because I saw Rob was talking about that, about potentially putting some
sleeve over it.
Sleeve over it so it blends into the tank. But it looks like a feat of engineering, to be fair. It's German as well.
Yeah, titanium carbon fibre. What can possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, UKM.
Hiya, pal.
Good evening to you. And there's a lot of chat going on. We've got Foxy.
Foxy. Hello, pal. How you doing?
Steve.
Steve Fox, Chad. You might remember him. He's actually visited you with the Yorkshire Reefer before. He heads up distribution in the UK for Ecotech.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Martin. Welcome back.
Hi, Martin.
Hiya. Rob, good evening.
Hi, Rob. There you are.
We've got Harry.
Hi, Harry.
Going very well, thank you. Where else? Rennie's Reef.
Rennie's Reef.
Hiya.
Hi, Rennie.
The logo, nice tank. And we've got your old buddy.
Steve. How you doing?
Hiya, Steve.
Yes,
see you. Hiya, Sam.
Hello, pal.
And then we've got Tim from the Wakefield.
Hiya,
Reef.
Tim.
How are you? Lee. Hiya, Lee.
Hi, Lee.
I was coming down to the bottom. We've got more and more people. Hiya, DC.
Hiya.
Good evening to you. And then we've got Chuckle to Rarely Fishing. Welcome back from last week.
Yeah.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Hello,
Good
Adam.
to see Adam's Love to Reef. And we've got Deborah as well. Deborah Lingard.
Hi, Debbie.
Hope
Hiya.
Jason's all right.
And Frag Rocks.
Frag
Good
Rocks.
evening
Hiya
to
there.
you. Hiya, Joe. Had a
Hi,
good chat with
Joe.
Joe earlier today, so it's good to see Joe.
Oh, should we?
No,
should we?
no.
Should we talk about Joe?
No, we're not.
So we're not going to mention it.
No,
Who wants to know about Paul's project?
no, not yet. It hasn't been confirmed or anything yet. All in due course. I wasn't going to tell you earlier.
No. He just can't keep it quiet. Can he?
So that's it. So thank you for everyone for joining so far. We'll catch up with some other people as and when they join. So what are we talking about tonight?
Right. Well, I think probably Chad. I think Angela.
An introduction.
An introduction. So first of all, for those that are watching, Angela and myself visited Florida. I think it was 3-4 years ago.
2022.
Yeah, something like that. I think it was just after COVID because we were still wearing masks on the aeroplane. That was right. Yeah. And how it all came about, if those that are watching, why is AAC showing a big interest in Reef Nutrition? Well, it was a brand that I'd seen for an awful long time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I kept seeing it pop up in the feed, and I'd heard really great things about this particular company, and anyone that was interested in breeding clownfish, particularly at the time, they all wanted these products they were seeing in the United States.
Yep.
There was definitely something more about it than just being in the United States. We had real trouble with supply in the UK.
Well, we couldn't get it.
We couldn't get it at all. So our dear friend Peter, who's now sadly passed away, Peter Moon, which some of you might remember in the chat, used to distribute Elos in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
A very nice man. He said to me one day, he said, "What are you going to do when you go to America?" Didn't he?
Yep.
And I said, "The first thing I'm going to do is go and talk to Reef Nutrition." And So Peter actually was at the time suffering with cancer, and he was looking for something to do.
Mm-hmm.
In the time, I decided that we should give it a try with you.
Yeah,
and
so we spoke to Chad, didn't we? When we
spoke to Chad. Yeah.
And then Peter got in touch with Lynn.
With Lynn, which is Chad's boss. Is that right? Chad, that's boss, isn't it? Lynn, isn't it?
And then that was that.
And that was
we took it on.
That's it. And we
we're
decided
still doing it 3 years later.
Yeah, we decided to give it a go. Yeah, it's gone very quick. We've loved every minute of it, in all honesty.
It has been good, and it has gone down well in the UK.
And
it really has.
Angela, just so for those of you in the chat, Angela pretty much runs it all as part of a subsidiary of AAC and supplies a few retail stores across the UK, and probably 2 of the most famous ones that you can buy those Reef Nutrition products from is Finest Aquatics and Charter House, which are doing quite well with it. That's that really. That's how it all became. And then, of course, we had to go through all the custom stuff, didn't we, Chad? Because it was really difficult when it to get your products into the UK. It was a real tough exercise. When I don't know if you maybe want to elaborate on that. Why is it so tough moving your products around, live, particularly products around the world?
Yeah, different countries around the world have different importation restrictions, and there's just long histories of countries bringing in diseased animals, even vegetables and things that are contaminated, and so countries have really stepped up their protocols for bringing those kinds of things in, and fish food gets grouped into all of that, unfortunately. Even though you were just feeding these to our fish in our aquarium, nobody's going to eat the fish in the aquarium, and so it's just, yeah, every nation is different. Even the EU, which is a bunch of nations in one basket, is pretty daunting to get some of our products into there, because they apply the same protocols and practices and certifications on fish food that they do on livestock and vegetables, and things like that. So it's just been really tricky to get governments to let us in, so to speak.
Is that really because of the categorization they have, that they're grouping it together with any kind of food stuff, so therefore the bar is higher?
Yeah, they throw it all into one basket, unfortunately. And there's like all this traceability stuff, where were these animals collected, who collected them, how did they do it? They want to know all these things, and some of that's just impossible to provide.
So I'm assuming if we was to talk about one product particularly, so things like the tiger pods, which we can't have in the UK legally. I know that they've made their way over here over the years, and there are a few that are culturing them. But I suppose the big fear of a lot of these countries is that, so first of all, you probably can't even remember when the first tiger pod was, as it's called, but the first was bred, which might have been back in 1995 or something. You can't remember. And then you've got to prove where that was first collected in order to be able to make the paperwork right for the chain some decades later. Is that right, Chad?
Yeah, it's a long process, and we get tiger pods into places where if they were potentially released, they might make it, but some governments don't care. Some nations, it doesn't bother them. After all, it is a little bug. It's just a little copepod. It's not going to make a serious impact on any ecosystem. But yeah, they just group it all together. Anything that's foreign, and if they are afraid of it, they just group it all together and exclude it completely.
Well, I think England England particularly was responsible for introducing all sorts of strange animals into our land. For example, Victorian times were. So, we've got the grey squirrel here, the North American grey. And of course, that outcompeted our red squirrel. So you can understand why people get nervous as such, but it almost gets a little bit ridiculous at times. And for those that are watching particularly, I often get asked, how comes we can't get our tiki pods or our live or tiger pods live? And one of the things I think we need to maybe explain to people tonight, one of the skills, we'll go into your the parent company in a minute, but one of the skills about Reef Nutrition is that you're able to always retain the cell structure of things like phytoplankton, whether it's frozen, preserved, whatever. There's some very special skills that come from your team, aren't there? How they're able to still keep a cell structure right, but it almost looks like under a microscope that it is alive as such, but in its shape and its form. But of course, it's dead. Yeah, but that's why we can only have those products in the UK, isn't it? The feast products as such, not preserved, but how would you explain that? They're not necessarily preserved. They're a sort of preserve. How would you explain that, Chad?
Yeah, I guess refrigeration stable, temperature stable and refrigeration. Preserved, that's an okay word to use. Refrigeration is the primary preservation in our liquid suspension feed. So you could call temperature the preservative.
Yeah. And as I said, then that's one of the reasons why when we're looking at other products as such like that, what stands out is that, so it's still believed that for the purity of the product, refrigeration is better than adding things to those products, which could in turn damage the cells. Is that right?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
the protein product.
Yeah, we want to avoid as many different chemicals as possible putting into these bottles. We use reverse osmosis, deionized water. We have a big water treatment facility here at our farm, so the base of the liquid is clean, pure water that goes in there, and we're totally transparent about this on our labels. You know, anybody can read these labels and see the ingredients. We do add some acids, some buffers, things to maintain pH. Because some of the products respond differently to high pH versus low pH. And to avoid using too many of those things, we just decided that temperature would be the best route to go with that. And that was something that was very unique back when we first came out with this stuff back in 2005. We've been doing this now for 20 years for Reef Nutrition. Wow. And it was very unique in the hobby. It took us a long time to kind of get into the hobby with that kind of thing, with a refrigerated liquid suspension food, because flake food, pelleted food dominated things back in the early 2000s, and even before that. And then the frozen foods, things like that. And people wanted an alternative to the frozen food. They wanted something that was easier to use. They don't have to touch the food. They don't have to thaw it out or rinse it. And so those were things that we definitely wanted to focus on with this product line and make it something incredibly novel.
Right, I think that we'll jump off the products for a minute because I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. But so, Chad, as an introduction, then, so I know that. So, first of all, you live in California, yeah? Have you always lived in California?
No, I grew up in Indiana, up by Chicago. If you've ever been to Chicago, by the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
And once I graduated high school, I went to college in Florida and started my.
And is that where you did your 2 degrees? I know you've got 2 degrees. So that exactly what degrees were they again?
Yeah, so I initially went to college to pursue a degree in marine biology. And then when I got to the college, I discovered that they were working on things, breeding animals and things that we were grouping in calling aquaculture, growing aquatic organisms to sell for food or to restock lake streams, doing all these things. And I was like, that's an interesting direction I should take. There might be money in that versus, marine biology, where you don't make much money. There's a lot of ecosystem stuff. And, a lot of people think marine biologists play with dolphins and train dolphins. And that's like very few people get into marine biology for that. And so I decided to take on the second discipline. And so marine biology and aquaculture, I got 2 bachelor's degrees. Yeah. 4 years.
And when so was you always interested in marine life as a boy? And is there a little bit of a backstory there? Where does the aquariums, for example, start?
Yeah.
And the fish, because I know. Tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember from a few years ago, I think I remember you telling me you've bred at least 20 species. Was it 20 or was it more than that? I can't remember.
It's roughly 30 species of marine ornamentals, and that's not counting all the invertebrates and things that I've grown. But I don't know. There's some people that might recognize this name, but Jacques Cousteau.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
way back in the day, you see these amazing documentaries, and the scuba diving was really cool to watch on TV. And I kind of got hooked on that and interested in that. And I got my first saltwater tank when I was 14 years old back in 1988. I got a 55-gallon. When lighting was absolutely terrible. We had under gravel filters. I remember when the first hang on the back filter came out, the Whisper Marine Land or something like that. And,
I remember.
Boy, have we come a long way.
Yeah, I know. It's astonishing, Chad, isn't it? I mean, the way that the hobby's moved in just that short period of time. 'Cause it's a relatively short period of time, isn't it? Yeah. We've gone from like flying an aeroplane to a space shuttle in 20 years sort of thing. It's unbelievable now compared to, in terms of technology, monitoring, lighting, filtration. And, it's a phenomenal leap, isn't it, from those times. But
Absolutely, and not to mention the aquaculture aspect. There are so many people fragging corals and breeding fish, and
Mm,
that has come an incredibly long way. And
mm,
it's really great for the hobby to go in that direction for
Mm.
sure.
mm. Yeah.
I've only been in the hobby 11 years, and I think LEDs really just come. So they went. I look at LEDs in terms of the generation from Ecotech. One, because I like Ecotech, and two, that you can kind of plot it. And I remember the Gen 2, and I still use Gen 3s, and that was only 11 years ago.
Mm,
And people were talking about automation for measuring alkalinity and stuff like that. And that was talked about for quite a while. I'm sure it was talked about a long time before I was in the hobby as well. And in the first one, and now we've got quite a few of them, and what you can monitor and understanding of the hobby is way beyond from when I started, and that's not that long ago. So it's come
Yeah.
leaps and bounds, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and I look back at guys like Julian Sprung and Joe Aiulo, just what they were doing in the
mm,
'90s, and I'm just amazed by what they were able to do with
mm,
such little technology and things like that.
mm.
So, yeah.
Well, for me particularly, as I said, it's been a lifetime sort of work and study, if you like, for me. And I remember, looking at those early books by Martin Moe
Yeah.
and Martin Moe Jr. They were my first two books, and then the next minute, of course, we had Sprung's books, the volume books, and they were such an inspiration to me. Those books, along with Foster and Nilsson. I don't know if you remember the Modern Coral Reef Aquarium. Astonishing when they were the huge leaps as such. It wasn't pigeon steps, was it, back then? I mean, I know that we should really give some credit to the Indonesian guy that first discovered that you can keep some living stones, as they called them at the time, in a tank with air, and you will keep your anemones alive and your angel fishes. I mean, it starts with some live rocks and some air, doesn't it, in a plywood lined aquarium. Yeah, in Indonesia. And I seem to remember in Tropical Fish Hobbyist, the famous US Tropical Fish magazine, there was a section in there in about 1986, 88, I think it was, when the first ever bio towers and trickle filters were coming on. And they basically dispelled this poor Indonesian's ideas of just using live rock and circulation and so forth as being rubbish. And it's funny how over time as well, in this 25 years we're talking about, or 30 years we're talking about, that we've sort of gone round and round, just like fashion. It's whether it's like flared jeans. 1 minute we're wearing skinny jeans, the next minute we're back into flares. And I think with marines particularly, even now there is a little bit more interest again in what I call the traditional Berlin method, which of course the Germans had focused on the Indonesian guy and adapted some bits and pieces to it. But it has been a phenomenal sort of 30 years. I mean, in terms of industry as well, just touch on industry there. I mean, the Germans were obviously at the time seemed to be, leading with technology and things like that. But there's no doubt about it. The US grew it big, didn't they? I mean, you must have seen I would guess that there's thousands of stores now in the US compared to probably what was just a handful. I remember Tony Vargas telling me he used to have to do like a day's travel to go to an LFS, that sort of thing. But it's been a phenomenal time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So anyway, basically we start off as a student. We get involved with a little bit of aquaculture. And then from there onwards, Chad, what happens then? So we've passed our exams. We get ourselves, no doubt, a little job in Florida somewhere. Am I guessing it right? Did you go to? You worked for Aura, didn't you, or ORA? How do you say it? Aura or ORA?
Yeah, ORA. Yeah. It's funny because while I was in college, I worked at a local pet store and got experience, because the experience that you gain by actually doing, actually the husbandry and taking care of the animals and having aquariums is vastly different than reading it in a book and learning it in a classroom. There's just no comparison. And so, I worked at a pet store while I was in college, and then that was my first job out of college. And I started I call it my gypsy aquaculture career, where I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife in Indiana, and I worked for a laboratory in St. Louis that worked on zebra danios, the Danio ririo, the little striped freshwater fish. and we did research on those, and that's where I kind of got experience with growing live feed organisms and doing in vitro fertilization. So we were essentially anesthetizing the females and males, getting their eggs and sperm, and fertilizing those eggs in a petri dish and raising them up. And that was some wild stuff. That was pretty intense. And all the while I was like, I want to work in marine ornamental aquaculture. And so ORA, I finally got a job with ORA, Oceans, Reefs, and Aquariums in Fort Pierce, Florida. And that's where I got a whole bunch of experience with every aspect of aquaculture, whether it was broodstock, quarantining wild caught fish to bring in as broodstock, larval rearing, live feeds, grow out, packaging. I even was involved in saving the company from a hurricane one year, where we moved every single one of our broodstock pairs into a hurricane bunker and rode out this storm and saved the company, basically kept these fish alive, drinking beers, eating pizza, watching movies on a laptop. While
That doesn't sound too bad.
like, it sounded like there was an ogre like trying to break the door down, this giant steel door that was just vibrating violently all night. It was pretty wild stuff. So you'll do anything for your animals, kind of thing.
Well, they are a magnificent company, Chad, and a company that I've followed forever. You know, I mean, that's where some of the first ever aquacultured corals were ever talked about, like the red planet acro that some people in the chat will have more than heard of. So now the words red planet are used by every hobbyist who's got an acro aquarium, and they just take that word for granted, a little bit like the strawberry shortcake acro, which obviously goes all the way back, I think, to unique corals, I think. But as I said, Aura were fundamental in really showing people about aquaculture in corals, but not just corals. I mean, the fish breeding. This is where we start to get our designer clowns. And I've got a funny story for you, Chad, that you may or may not know some of. So TMC, Tropical Marine Centre, which you all know very well, there was a gentleman that you might have remembered from a long time ago called Mark Wilson, who now heads up Vitalis for fish food in the UK. Right now, Mark Wilson was breeding clownfish for TMC in their hatchery when they had them. And Mark used to get very upset because a lot of his clownfish used to be born with funny wavy stripes on them, and stupid stripe here and a funny stripe there and a spot here and a bit of black there. Anyway, so Mark used to cull them, and he used to, obviously, like most decent.
Same here.
Yeah. So he used to remove all of those because they didn't look like the Ocellaris or the Percula that they should be. And then apparently some years later, when TMC decided that they would cease with the hatchery in the UK soil and invest further afield in projects in foreign lands, and so to speak, those broodstock parents ended up in Aura. Some of them. I don't know whether you know that or whether, but apparently there are still pairs to this day at Aura that originated about 25 minutes down the road from me. So I don't know if you know that, but as I said, they were before Boston Sea and Reef. I believe they were the first fancy, or one of the first fancy clownfish breeders, weren't they?
Right. Yeah. And we were too. We were the designer clowns, people refer to them as. But I remember miss bars. We couldn't sell what we called miss bars. You know, they had those bar pattern deformities, we call them, whatever. And we couldn't sell those to save our soul. And then suddenly we got this pair that they called Picasso. And we started breeding those, and I was kind of there at the ground level of the designer clownfish, the beginning of it, and it was pretty wild. And then suddenly we were going through our grow out systems looking for really unique patterns. Fish, obviously we wanted fish that were growing fast and developing their pigment early on, something of a robust animal that we wanted to breed, selective breeding, like anybody would do. And then we started looking for those weird pigment patterns, and now they're a dime a dozen.
Yeah, and it's funny, Chad, I'm going to ask you something here. But as I said, so despite the fact that I sell hundreds of designer clownfish every year, the truth is, I don't mind some of them, but I still think nature did it best. Do you have a similar thought? I mean, how do you feel about these hybrids that we're seeing with like angelfish and tangs and things? I mean, I'm a sucker for them now, but like there was a period where I wouldn't have entertained any of it.
Yeah, the hybridization stuff is quite interesting, but along the lines with the clownfish stuff, it's there are so many people breeding clownfish, and I just anybody I can talk to, I'm like, pay close attention to your brood stock, what they look like, the nutrition, how you're raising the babies, because there are a lot of people selling fish that don't look like their wild type counterparts. You know, they have
Yeah.
some weird deformities. There's something not quite right about the forehead. You know, the fins don't look quite right. And so, you know, the companies that are selling good quality, good looking clownfish are the ones that are keeping pedigrees and also bringing in wild caught to invigorate their genetic lines. Because once you start inbreeding these, you know, you're going to eventually end up with the Chihuahua of clownfish, and it's, you know, it's not going to be a good animal. So,
I think there is a point, isn't there? There's a point,
Yeah.
isn't there? So, for example, at the moment, I'll tell you, in terms of aquaculture, which I know you'll probably know this gentleman, but Wen Pensu, the guy from Bali Aquarish, I mean, wow! I mean, that guy is doing. I mean, he's got outdoor ponds that are filled
is that
with
the
natural.
guy from Coral George 12G?
Possibly.
He went round in a recent video, and it was unbelievable. The acreage that they had, and the vats, and the number of clownfish was just unbelievable. But also, he's breeding angelfish as well. I think they've gone into as
regal
well,
angels,
and as you say, the hybrid. And it's just amazing when you see it, just the size and scale of it. And it was pumping straight from the sea.
I know.
Just a constant water change of water. And when it's going back out, there was these kind of little rivers, and there's all these clownfish and all these fish in the not waste away water, because it was still good quality water. But it's a constant. God knows what kind of pump they were using to pump it all around the system, and then it was flowing back out. It was just amazing. It's called.
It's an amazing. In fact,
when you look at it, it's unbelievable.
You know, there's a local customer, you know, Dean Gilbert. He's just recently visited. He sent
me some videos.
Yeah, he's just recently visited there, and there's some areas where you're not allowed at Bali Aquarish, you know, because where they're doing like the Yerpal scenario, and you know, I've just recently acquired a Yerpal, but I've actually been talking to Kevin Burden, Chad.
Yeah, Serge.
Serge Marine Life, and I'm actually an owner of one of his early Skirpals. I've got a Skirpal, but going back to what you were saying about aquaculture, aquaculture's, I think, a really good thing, but something you just mentioned is that any decent aquaculture person will still need wild resource, because we need to keep those bloodlines good. Would you say that's a really important point, Chad? We still need to keep bringing in the strong bloodlines to keep the animals in, so they're not getting so many deformities and problems like that. Because I've seen some shocking examples from some aquaculture outfits. I've got a certain tang with no ventral fins, and I've seen at Harry de Jong's place a yellow tang with a nose that went like this, and you know, so I don't think culling's going on as much as it used to in our day. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, it's not just the avoiding the inbreeding aspect of aquaculture, but also just the larva rearing techniques have to be spot on. You have to provide those larvae with high quality nutrition early on, because if you're not giving them the right nutrition, if something's missing, they're going to have skeletal deformities. They're going to have pigment pattern deformities. The cells and the biochemistry it's not going to work properly. And we've learned a lot about what makes those animals do well. Fatty acids, you know, amino acids, proteins, specific things that come from specific live feed organisms, or specific plankton, like phytoplankton, that you feed to that live feed organism. And so if an aquaculture company is doing well with their live feeds and taking good care of their larvae and weaning them properly, then they can avoid a lot of those deformities. But when it comes to inbreeding, there's really not much you can do. So it's good for companies to, you know, try to avoid inbreeding too much. And luckily some of these pairs can live for decades and breed. You know, I don't know if there's any studies out there on what a 20-year-old clownfish pair is producing versus a 5-year-old clownfish pair. If they're, you know, if all things are the same, are the larvae developing differently? Are they coming out more deformed for the older pair? You know, there's all these things.
Well, I know with Erectus seahorses that, you know, that I breed as well. With Erectus seahorses, when my big parents are giving birth, the appropriate sized parents are giving birth, shall I say, then the young But of course, there's a lot of teenage pregnancies that go on, and as you know, I mean,
they start early.
they're like
They do.
6-8 weeks, and they're already thinking about it, you know. So you have to try and fend them off a little bit and stop that going on.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think what we'll do is that we'll go back to the chat in a minute,
we've
because
got
I think
questions.
Paul wants to do some chat and maybe some questions, and then we'll talk about perhaps the next for Chad Clayton from working in aquaculture at that level, and then you're into reed mariculture, which is obviously the big so or in between. So Paul, I think we'll go over to the chat.
We've got chat, and we've got 3 questions from Field Reef. I know he's been talking about plankton. I've seen mine talking about it as well. But
Okay.
so a few more people say hello. So hi, Steve.
Oh,
Hello.
From
California.
do you know this gentleman?
I know him. Yeah, he's my coworker. He's one of our project managers here.
Hello, Steve. Thank you for joining this evening. He's doing well, Steve, so don't worry.
He's in the office next to me.
Oh, he's watching. All right, okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right, we've got the first question from Tim. Now, I'm not going to try and pronounce this, but if you find you're in your live plankton, is it good or bad? And can you still add it to your tank? Is any benefit?
Yeah,
What's he mean, Chad? What's he mean,
Yeah,
Chad?
so-
Explain to the rest.
Okay, so Euplotes is a ciliated protozoan. So it's not an animal. It's not a plant. These are very unique little critters. They are they're very common. They're ubiquitous in aquaculture. They are they're organic waste eaters. They love a system that's dirty. And they tend to breed quite rapidly. They just asexually reproduce themselves. And so these I've seen in every aquaculture facility I've ever been to. They're probably in everybody's aquariums. There are a lot of species in the Euplotes genus. And so when Euplotes get into phytoplankton culture, that's really bad. That's something you absolutely do not want. But if they are in there and you're feeding the phytoplankton to your system, it's okay. In fact, corals will eat ciliates with no problem at all. And they will not get out of control in your system because there's too many checks and balances. There's too many animals eating each other. And ciliates are often eaten by mandarin dragonettes. They'll peck at ciliates too if they see them on the rock. And so when they get into a rotifer culture, they're also very bad because they tend to breed quite rapidly and will outbreed, so to speak, the rotifers and end up spoiling the culture. And also the same thing applies to copepods. So when we see Euplotes getting into our cultures, which we haven't seen in a long time, we typically bleach the entire thing and start over. Even rotifers are ciliated animals, and when they get into our copepod cultures, we have to nuke the culture and start over, because the rotifers are very similar in size to the newly hatched copepods, and they're impossible to screen out. And so the last time this happened to me, I was literally under a microscope picking out copepods that were swimming around and excluding the rotifers under a microscope to start new cultures. It's pretty wild.
So you had to start a new culture from a microscope slide?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that must be work.
It was tedious. Tedious. But they're not bad for your tank. Ciliates are not bad for your tank. They're there. Right. I can guarantee you right now, they're everywhere in your tank, in your sediment, in your rock.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Great question, Tim.
We'll come back to another one in a moment. So first of all, we've got Sylvester Reef. Good evening.
Hi, Sylvester.
Another one from Tim. Do Tigger pods have any nutritional value for fish?
Absolutely. Copepods. So Tigger pods are a copepod. Copepods are one of the most abundant animals on the planet. Virtually every aquatic ecosystem on the planet. Most of them are parasitic, but the ones that we work with are not. And so copepods, the ones that are out in the open ocean and coastal zone areas, they are phytoplankton, bacteria, and organic detritus consumers. And so Tigger pods are notorious for eating phytoplankton and storing the carotenoid, so the pigments that come from the phytoplankton. This copepod will store that carotenoid in its body to help prevent stress from UV, because they live in splash pools, and they're fully exposed to the sun all day long, all kinds of temperature swings, things like that. So they store this carotenoid. So that's why when you see them in a store in America, you would see them as bright red. And this carotenoid is incredibly good for your animals when they consume it. Carotenoids are antioxidants, they're pigment enhancers, and they must come from the diet. There are very few animals on the planet that can synthesize their own carotenoids. I think spider mites are one of them. And so carotenoids coming from the diet, a classic example of a carotenoid coming from the diet for an animal is a flamingo. Flamingos pigment pattern or that coloration on their feathers comes directly from their diet. That's why if you see a flamingo at a zoo and it's pink, they are supplementing that diet with a carotenoid. And so that's one thing that makes them nutritionally valuable. Another thing are the fatty acids that copepods contain, that they get from the phytoplankton that they consume. Some copepods are able to upgrade fatty acids, and so fatty acids are an excellent source of nutrition for your animals. And they also contain protein enzymes that aid in their own digestion, so to speak. And so in finfish larva rearing, when a yellow tang larvae eats a copepod, that copepod, when it starts to break down, essentially is digesting itself, because yellow tang larvae, when they first hatch, have a very rudimentary gut. And so it's important that their prey item, the food that they're consuming, starts to break down kind of on its own. And so there's just a variety of good things that are great about these animals, copepods, and a lot of their nutritional value comes from what they're consuming. And that's why at Reed Mariculture, we feed them phytoplankton and a variety of species so that they can get all those nutritional qualities of the phytoplankton into their muscle, into their body tissue, and their stomachs. So.
Now, just interesting, like Chad, something I remember I was talking to you because I think around about the first time I visited Reefpalooza, when I first met you, I was very focused on these live ticker pods. They're a wonderful little creature to watch. I mean, I know we feed them to our animals, but they're an amazing little thing, aren't they? And the name Tigger Pods, the brand name Tigger Pods, isn't obviously their real name. Would you like to spell their real name out for people?
Yeah, it's Tigriopus californicus. Their geographical range is from Alaska all the way down to the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. They have a huge ecological range, and they are primarily a coastal splash pool species.
Yeah,
and we call them Tigger pods because of the movement. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Winnie the Pooh, but Tigger was always bouncing around, and actually the people who created Winnie the Pooh actually reached out to us about the name, and they were cool with it. So.
Oh, they're all right. They're all right with you using the word Tigger. So they bounce around. I saw that. Now, one thing that was very interesting, not every copepod, despite its nutritional value, is useful for certain species. I was talking to you about seahorses and pipes, and you said that in actual fact they can be a bit of a pain in the arse in our language, because they will crawl all over the seahorses and all over the pipefish. So again, it's not just about having the world's greatest copepod to feed your fry or your larvae with. It's more about having the right copepod to do the job. And this is where aquaculture has took huge leaps. So I'm guessing that Tigger pods might be useful, therefore, then for yellow tangs, because they can move away from them, maybe. But Tigger pods perhaps wouldn't be quite so good, maybe, for like pipefish we were talking about, snake pipes or something, because they might be, well, mind you, snake pipes would probably eat them, I'm guessing. But there are certain copepods for certain fish. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the Tigger pods are primarily a benthic organism, so they'll be in the gravel and on the reef rock and on surfaces. I have heard of them being irritating to cygnathids, to seahorses and pipefish, but I've only heard one or two reports of that. I do know people that have live copepods, Tigger pods and other species in their seahorse tanks, and their seahorses do just fine. They swim around pecking at them. But it is absolutely true that there are different copepods for different uses, and that's why we carry 3 different species, and they all have vastly different uses. The Tigger pods are primarily used by people who have mandarin dragonets or a seahorse kind of system, ecosystem, and they'll get those tigger pods in there because they're nice and big. They're easily found. They're easy to hunt down. They're very conspicuous, and they're packed full of nutrition. And so those are the primary people that are using tigger pods. I do know some people that are breeding axolotls, and they actually feed the tigger pods to baby axolotls because tigger pods can swim around in fresh water for many, many hours. So that was a really interesting use that I had heard for them.
I suppose the reason being is that those particular copepods, if they're in splash pools, there's going to be rain. The salinities are going to be fluctuating widely. The temperature is going to fluctuate widely. So it makes them quite a hardy species then to mess around with. Yeah, but
absolutely.
But just for those I do know that there are tigger pods potentially illegally in the UK, right? But at the same breath, Tigger Feast, which is the dead version of it, you've managed to preserve somehow, which I know is a secret, but you've managed to preserve those in their whole format in the dead product, the Tigger Feast. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we can't get the live tigger pods in, but we can get the dead concentrated tigger pods in Tigger Feast. Yeah,
and the nutritional value, no real difference in the nutritional value.
Exactly the same nutritional value. In fact, they might be better nutritionally because when
they're sort of flashed.
When tigger pods are in your system and they're getting consumed over weeks and weeks and weeks, those tigger pods aren't eating the same thing that we're feeding them, and so their nutritional profile is different. And so the tigger pods and Tigger Feast they're fully boosted with nutrition. They're, and all of that is frozen in time, so to speak. Yeah. And there are 53 bottles of biomass in one bottle of Tigger Feast. And that product is incredibly unique globally because we're one of the largest producers of copepods on the planet. And we're one of the only companies that are doing anything like this. This product, those Tigger pods are not harvested from a natural environment. They are 100% aquacultured.
Amazing. Right, Paula. Thank you very much, Chad.
One more question. We've got a few more comments to go through. So the next one is isocrisis worth the effort for feeding your corals, or is more for feeding pods to feed fish fry?
Yeah, no, I recommend feeding phytoplankton absolutely to your corals. The small particle size and the nutritional qualities they're just great for your corals. And filter feeders.
Is that all corals generally, or is there ones that are more specifically that you would use it for?
Well, yeah. So more specifically, the non-photosynthetic corals, filter feeders like bivalves, clams, scallops, oysters, and also like feather duster worms, sponges, tunicates. A lot of those corals will 100% benefit from phytoplankton feeding, and of course, a lot of your other photosynthetic corals will absolutely eat phytoplankton and do quite well on it. And so I would definitely, you definitely keep feeding isocrisis if you're growing it, or we have isocrisis in our phytofeast. It's one of the species in there, and isocrisis is a great T isocrisis is a great species because it's really high in the fatty acid DHA. Which makes it very valuable to people who are breeding fish, because DHA is one of those fatty acids that is paramount. It has to be in the diet for larval fish like yellow tangs for them to develop properly.
And I think this is where something I've learned. I've done some very rudimentary phytoplankton. I mean, it'd be like a horror story if I showed you what I tried doing. The contamination. I mean, it was like every few weeks. Oh, we tried growing Tetrasalmis, I think it was. And I've done okay with Anacropolis because obviously it's quite hardy. But Tetrasalmis and isocrisis are far more delicate compared to Nanacropolis to grow, aren't they? Yeah. And this is where sometimes I know the other products that Clownfish, Angela, actually, you supply a gentleman in the Midlands for his clownfish rearing, and she also no, not so much the TDO. Angela supplies the roti green and things like that, for clownfish breeders. But of course, some of these plankton is quite difficult and easy to contaminate. And I know, Paul, you said to me that you tried rearing clown. The biggest problem for you was that phytoplankton cultures would crash at the time. Yeah, and so this is where breeds come in.
So I tried it for about 6 months. I had a pair of Picasso. They had a count amount of eggs, and I never got it past day 5, and I just had running out of cultures or culture crashes, and that was the rotifers and the phyto, and that was the thing that you say you need the quality of food, and of course then if you start dosing that, you then get ammonia. You get ammonia spikes, and then that kills the fry. So it's that cycle, isn't it, of having the quality input. And if it's not there, then obviously you can't feed it and they die. But if you do and it's just not the top quality, they'll die anyway. So I then run out of time to do it because it was a constant feed. And of course, I was a complete newbie on it. So it was really interesting what I'd done. And to actually just get it to 5 days, I thought was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. And I'd go back to it one day. But it was a real commitment when you're starting from a blank piece of paper and you've got no idea what you're doing.
Well, this is where now I think this is where the sort of the change. This is where reed mariculture, in so many words, stopped this problem for hobbyists and for obviously professional institutes and things that are rearing food fish for the table and oysters things. Because this is what made reed mariculture, Reef Nutrition internationally famous for, because of course you was then producing slabs of frozen phytoplankton that was none of the cells were damaged during the process, and you was able to. So this stopped the problem. Is that right, Chad? This is what Reed focused on.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the biggest bottlenecks in aquaculture is live feeds production, and specifically algae production. It costs a lot of money to grow algae. It takes up a lot of space. You have to have dedicated staff. The threat of contamination is always present, and sterilization is paramount. And so those things are really hard for people to overcome. And we came along and started to alleviate that for people. And we are directly responsible for the growth of aquaculture in many countries, especially the growth of clownfish aquaculture in the United States. Because if these clownfish people had to grow their own algae, to grow their own rotifers, they would have quit. They'd have been out really quickly. But now they don't have to grow the algae. They can just buy it. You know, it's like, I don't have to own the cow to have milk. I can just buy the milk. And so that's been huge. I mean, it helped aquaculture take a big leap upwards.
And is this true also in the? I'm really interested. I know as much as everyone who's watching tonight is an aquarium keeper and a hobbyist, but I'm sure they'd be interested. So if we look at perhaps go back to again phytoplankton again. So the majority, I'm guessing more like 75% of what Reed Mariculture, Reef Nutrition is about is for food for the table. Is that right? Yeah. And are these products being used? So the hobbyist versions that we've got. So I brought actually. So this is a sort of in-between product, RG Complete, which some people might know. That this is the step into the hobby, but the big boys are using the roti greens and things, but it's more or less the same sort of thing, isn't it? It's this is what's prevented is for the food industry. They're using all the same products but just on a grand scale.
Yeah, they're using all the same species that we put into PhytoFeast, but the blends are different. They're more targeted depending on the species that they're working with. Yeah, it's basically the same stuff. And they like you said, the algae is not viable. It is not alive. And that is very unique. That's something that we were able to do. And that way we could freeze the algae depending on the cell, or refrigerate it and concentrate it more than you could possibly grow it. You know, like let's say our Nano 3600, our product, it's a 1 kilo slab of frozen phytoplankton, and that 1 kilo slab is the equivalent to 3,600 liters of algae.
Wow!
So you would have to grow that much algae to equate to the same exact biomass in that little pack that you can freeze for 3 years, and that for aquaculture was huge. That was just a massive thing for people to.
And where is that particular product you mentioned they're used? Give me some examples of the food. I know you mentioned to me just before we came on live about cod in Norway. I know, now, of course, we're all Europeans here, most of us. So so tell us about what you send around the world and where it goes to, and for what species that are outside of aquatics. Let's have a listen to that. I'll be interested about the cod thing.
So yeah, it's interesting you brought up the food, because I've literally eaten an animal that was grown on our phytoplankton. When I worked in Hawaii, I raised a fish. It was a species of jack, a carangid, and we used reed mariculture phytoplankton to grow our rotifers, which were then fed to the larval fish, and then we would wean them onto otahimi, and then grow them out in these offshore cages, and then sell them as whole fish, and then we would just fillet them. And I actually got to eat the fish that was grown on the algae, so to speak. And there's people that are doing that with oysters. So yeah, we sell algae all over the world. For instance, Korea has a oyster aquaculture, and we sell a lot of algae to them. We sell algae to the EU, to the UK, to places in Africa, in Indonesia, in India, 80 different countries and multiple universities. People are also, taking the phytoplankton and extracting certain things to learn more about phytoplankton. So there's researchers and academics doing things with the algae. They don't have to grow it; they can just buy it. So it helps with with their research, that they don't have to grow the
basically
thing.
they'll keep it in the fridge or the freezer and then take an extract from it, and then they can use that for research, so they don't need a culture behind them and totally worrying about it crashing and space and anything else associated with it.
Yeah, and it's not contaminated. It comes to these people contamination free. All that's in there is algae cells and some liquid, and the rest of it is, there's nothing else in there. We go to great lengths to make sure that we exclude any contaminants. Our quality control is pretty strict, and so is our filtration and everything, because we want aquaculture. We want people in aquaculture just to succeed. We don't want to sell them a contaminated product, and so that's something we take very seriously.
Of course, if I started breeding clownfish again, what products would I use, rather than me having a couple of tanks behind me in my garage trying to get cultures of rotifiers and phyto? What would I substitute that with nowadays that makes life a damn sight easier?
Yeah, the RG Complete that Paul was holding, that bottle.
Oh, that one. Okay, so that'd be good enough to put in with the fry, and that would sustain them until they start moving on to live foods that you can then.
The RG Complete is what you would feed to the rotifers. That's what you would use to culture your rotifers.
Right.
And then you would feed those rotifers to your larvae, to your clownfish.
Meaning that you don't have to worry about the risk of
the
phyto.
Yeah. And taking one step out.
And the cool thing about RG Complete is that it's got a few different species of microalgae. It also has a buffer in it and an ammonia neutralizer, and so it helps with enriching the rotifers, getting the rotifers to reproduce themselves, and also to keep water quality stabilized in the culture. It's a very unique product, and we have one that's equivalent to that, that's used in aquaculture, that's 3 times as concentrated, but it lacks the ammonia neutralizer and the pH buffer. But that's something that some of our clownfish breeders will do. They'll start with the RG Complete, and we kind of refer to that as the training wheels feed for people that are just getting into rotifer culture. And then when they start ramping up their production, they're selling more fish, they have more brood stock, they're producing more larvae, they need more rotifers, they'll switch over to the more industrial strength algae, which is RotoGrow Plus. And so
Angela, I think, sells that to quite a few clownfish breeders in the UK. That's quite popular with them. They all love our clownfish breeders over here. I mean, that's one of your core lines, isn't it? I know Angela's supplying that to at least 3 or 4 clownfish breeders already in the UK, and that's their first choice product. Is this? They're in the frozen format, aren't they? Those ones?
Yes, exactly. Yep, frozen pack.
Yeah. Do you want to carry on with the chat?
Let's have a go. Yeah. So thank you for that. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So East Coast Reefer, I knew it. Abiz, get us some black canopies.
All right. Thanks.
As did Martin from earlier on, I started my first marine tank in 1980. Coral was kept like cut flowers and had a short life.
I haven't heard that for years. My boss used to say to me actually about the cut flowers thing. I wonder whether Martin knew my old boss, but he used to use that. People used to buy coral when it was half alive from Philippines, like big beautiful acros that still had some tissue on them, and then they'd literally put them in a bucket full of bleach because they preferred them looking white. I
don't say white for long though, didn't
it? No, but like Martin said, you used to buy a coral and never think you was going to own it for more than a few weeks.
Unbelievable. Right. Reef and Teeth. Good
Hi,
evening,
Jamie.
Hi, Jamie. How are you? And then we got Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hello, Dan.
The clown eyes.
Digital Corals. That's first. Hiya. How you doing?
Yeah.
And there we go. There's a question from Martin. How long will tiger pods live in a reef tank without predators present?
Yeah, they'll live indefinitely without predators. Absolutely. Yeah.
And what will they feed on, Chad? Just like detritus and things?
Yeah, they're pretty hardy when it comes to that kind of thing. I mean, we feed them phytoplankton here because we want them to grow and reproduce as fast as possible, you know, at high density. But in an aquarium, if you're not feeding the aquarium algae, they will eat, you know, the naturally occurring diatoms that grow in aquariums. In fact, diatoms is one of the primary things that copepods that aren't parasitic are eating in nature. Diatoms are just super abundant in many aquatic environments. So yeah, they'll live there for a long time. The only thing that changes about them is they tend to get a little bit smaller and they lose that red coloration. I've heard from people telling me that the copepods are more white than they are red after a certain number of months, and that's basically because, you know, they're not eating the same algae that we're providing them, so they're not getting that abundance of carotenoids from the phytoplankton that they're storing in their body. So
they're surviving, but they haven't got that richness in their food.
Yeah, they're not quite as nutritionally enriched as they are coming out of our facility. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Hopefully Martin answers the question. Hiya, Hayley. How you
Hi,
doing?
Hayley.
And then I'd assume as long as food source remains, considering an appropriate habitat.
I think that's in response to.
Oh, that's in response to Martin's.
To
Right.
Martin's,
Okay,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can hit the like button, that would be absolutely.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, hit the like button, everyone. No, that's funny.
I've grown some algae in my
Yeah, you have.
I'm sure we all have.
I'm not sure that he's referring to that type of algae, Steve,
Right.
but yeah, I remember some hairy green tanks in my time. Yeah.
We're all guilty.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. I've got some frags of GHA.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've all been through that in different stages.
I'm sure it's still a valuable food source, Chad, for something, isn't it? I'm not sure. It's a good food source for tangs. Yeah.
Foxy's got a question.
Yeah, we've got a question from Steve Fox. Hi, Chad. I use a few of your products and have noticed that the animals seem to be as good on day one of opening the bottle as the last drop. I've noticed some other brands seem to degrade theirs.
Yeah. Is there a reason? Below he
Oh,
says
got another one. Is there a reason, please? Why yours stay fresh and healthy and others don't?
Yeah, that's just a testament to the years of just blood, sweat, and tears of product testing, getting the chemistry right in the bottles, perfecting how we ship them, you know, looking at how long these products last at refrigeration temperatures. You know, we're very conservative with our shelf life, our best buy dates. We don't call them expiration dates. They're called best buy dates. And so it's just a testament to the amount of work that we put into our products to make sure that, you know, they are as fresh on day one as they are, you know, towards the end of their best buy date. You know, and it's just, you know, our customers really appreciate that. We're very consistent.
I mean, Angela, actually, I don't know if you want to have a little word, but I know that obviously Angela deals with your office. Obviously, she deals with Nancy, and Angela. So what you put in an order, just to give everyone an idea of how quick. So we're dealing with California in the UK.
Yeah.
Go on, Ange.
I will email Nancy on a Thursday, like I have tonight, put an order in, and we get it here by the Monday. So
fresh as a daisy, still freezing cold.
Yep, and it's still cold. Still fresh, and it just arrives very, very quickly. The service is amazing.
Yeah,
you guys.
And I think the other thing about the dates, so a lot of people, when they're buying Reef Nutrition, we've had it before, where it never seems like you got much of a date on a bottle, but that's not because I've had Oyster Feast go way beyond date that I've kept in my fridge, and it's still absolutely fine. Yeah. But the reason for it is, Chad, is that you just want the customer to have the ultimate experience, don't you? It's the best experience, isn't it? You want them as fresh as you can. So in actual fact, I remember when we first started doing a bit of business, you said to me, Paul, don't buy loads of it. Buy a small amount, sell it, but often. You'd rather do little orders with us than do great big whacking orders, and then the food life not being. You'd rather so it's fresh all the time. Yeah. That's the point.
Most of the products have got quite a good date on them, haven't they? Anyway.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'd say it's got the short days, obviously the RG complete.
Yeah.
That got 6 months, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. It's
Okay, so let's go back into.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a comment here. Would you invite any random, less experienced hobbyists or people like me who have found it tough but made it to somewhere I can be happy?
I'm not sure what that means. So would
you want to just explain? I didn't want to pass by the comment, but I don't fully understand. Polymate 3D, where you're coming from.
If Polymate, if you need to, if it's some advice or help that you would like, you can either message Paul on as Fishpalace on Instagram, or by all means come through to AAC on the chat. Just obviously, if that is not your real name, obviously it's not, but put your real name next to your tag name so that we know it about. And I'm sure there are experienced hobbyists that this whole thing, this live stream, is not about excluding anyone from anything. If you needed some help, there's lots of hobbyists in the chat that I know that would only be too pleased to help, but the whole community is here to help. So if it's help you need, by all means reach out to either Paul or myself, and say Paul Fishpalace on Instagram, and AAC if you need to have a chat.
Yeah, or if you've got a slightly different question, then please put it in there. There you go. Thank you from Martin. So nice one.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dylan's in. Hi,
son. Hello, son.
Where we go? And we've got that timing information for access to it. It's critical for the clownfish and other breeding. Thanks for that. And then another corner here. I started when younger, back in 2010 to 2018. I had only success with xenia and fish.
To be fair, we all start somewhere, and I've got some stories too. And most of us have a steep learning curve, I would say, in the hobby.
I think everyone, when you get into it, it's a steep learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you don't never stop learning, for sure. Right, we're at the end of the comments.
Yeah, so I think now what we're going to do is so we'll have a little chat about shows, Chad. Of course, I'll let Paul take over here, but we've obviously got Love to Reef coming up, which I'll lead on to Paul and the fact that you're coming, Chad. So maybe you want to.
Yeah, brilliant. So we announced that Chad's only coming to represent Reef Nutrition and ask any questions on the stand, but also going to talk to be one of our guest speakers. So we've got Matt from Oata, who's going to be there, and Chad's going to be joining us well for a chat. We're going to kind of go fine tune what the content's going to be, but I'm sure it'll be plankton related, building blocks, all that kind of stuff. So thank you for agreeing to join us on the day and for being a guest speaker. So it'd be absolutely fantastic to have you with us. Be brilliant. I just want to talk about the show for a minute, and it'd be great to get after that just your feel on, you go to a hell of a lot of shows in the US, just to talk a little bit about that and the reefing scene out there, because I know you're quite close to the scene. But before we jump into that, so loads of people that are in the chat have bought tickets, so thank you very much. We're now, I think, about 30% up year on year, so that's really, really good. As I said before, I just want to sell the tickets as quick as possible. They will sell out, only because then I can spend more time on constructing and organising the show. So it allows me more time and I've got some ideas of stuff, as I said before, that I want to do at the show, but I need the time to do it. If you want a ticket, then you can go to the website, AAC. You can pop into the store the weekend if that's what you want to do. Or you can message me on Fishpalace or Love to Reef on Instagram or via the website or via Facebook. So there's lots of opportunity to contact me. Or
and if you don't want to do none of that, of course, you could just call in the store and get
absolutely
someone to just do it manually
if you want, old style, then if you still got a phone, and you've got a phone you use, because most people don't use their mobiles to phone nowadays, but phone the shop. And we can do that. So actually, in terms of vendor, we've got one more vendor that's joined. I'm just waiting for the logos and that to come over, and then we can announce that. And also, we've got quite a good giveaway that's coming as well, which I can't believe we're going to have. But I'm waiting just to line that up, and then we will announce that. But that's going to be really, really good. So that'll be something different. So lots of stuff still to come on that. More information, message, or go to the website. That's my plug. So, Chad, tell us about shows in the US, because we see them and obviously they're huge. The population's a lot bigger in the US, and the reefing hobby's a lot bigger, just by I suppose the fact that the population's a lot bigger than the UK. But I know you go to a lot of shows, so tell them what's going on in the US at the moment that you see.
How many shows do you do, Chad?
It changes every year. Sometimes I'll do 10 shows in a year. Sometimes I'll do 5. I kind of have to be picky and selective about the shows that I do because I still have young kids, and I don't want to miss out on that. You only get one shot. But it's always tricky to juggle that kind of thing. But we do the big shows in the U.S. We've been doing shows for 20 years. They have just been a great place for us to touch base with our customers, to meet our customers in person, to meet stores in person, to visit stores in the areas where these shows are. We don't have a large traveling sales staff. It's just us, me and whoever comes with me to these shows. We get to, visit these stores and do some sales and touch base with stores, things like that. But the shows they're just huge, and some of them are very reef specific. Some of them have freshwater and reef, and they're all in these areas of the U.S. where the markets are the biggest. So we've got a big show in Florida, up in New York, New Jersey. There's some shows in California, Denver, Texas. And so those are kind of the hot spots for these shows, and they pretty much are just there permanently, like the Reefapaloozas. And you just get, you get everybody from people that have never heard of this hobby to, folks that have been in it for years and years and years. And there's just something unique about visiting the company that you buy from, and talking with them and asking them any question you want and getting a picture with them or whatever. It's just a good vibe at these shows. And some of the locations aren't bad either. If you ever can make it to Orlando, Florida, to the Caribe Royale, the hotel for
Chad, no, it's work.
Is Reefapalooza sort of the biggest one that you do in America? Is that the biggest show?
Yeah, those are the biggest shows we do. Yeah, they bring in thousands of people, upwards of 5,000 people for Orlando and New Jersey and Southern California, LA areas is also.
You support them shows quite a lot, don't you? Because when we've been a couple of times, we've all seen with the T-shirts with the Reef Nutrition on the back and stuff like that. So our belief in the existence of stores is really good for the hobby. We believe that these shows are really good for the hobby as well. And so we support them not just by being a vendor and getting a table, but we also sponsor most of these shows. And we recently are the platinum sponsor for all the Reefapalooza shows, which is a top tier sponsor. And so we dish out a lot of money for that. That's not cheap to have that booth right by the entrance. Costs a heck of a lot. But since we don't have, a sales staff that's out there pounding the pavement for us, that money is spent on these shows. And we also do a lot of donations to clubs in those areas, and those club members like to come and visit us and see us. So we're all about grassroots, all about touching base with our customer base, whether it's the hobbyist or the store owner or distributor from anywhere in the world, and also being there for them through our tech support. And making sure that everybody is aware that we are here. We answer phones. We we respond to emails as best we can, and we want to help people. Even if we have to hold your hand through multiple emails, we'll help you through it. So
well, I think our relationship, Chad, if it wasn't for Reefapalooza, our relationship would never have been the case, probably. But it was just that as I was visiting and I saw you in all these shows, and of course, like you said, Reef Nutrition, platinum sponsor, a big sponsor, but not the biggest companies there, perhaps with the most money. But you've always really focused on it. Would you say, I know Paul and we've spoken a lot about this on previous live streams, we believe, particularly after COVID, that a lot of these shows as well were socially very good and good for people's mental health, and online forums and of Facebook chat places can be like. It's when people get together, it's a very different atmosphere, isn't it? Completely different. So
Yeah, absolutely. And even after the show, I have learned so much in the after parties and the going out to the restaurants and sitting at the bar till 3 a.m. I've learned more.
No, we don't do that. No, we don't, Chad. No, please, Chad. No. It's all work, okay? The accountant's watching, the customers are watching.
And our son's watching.
No, and our sons are watching. And my son always says to me, mate, I never forget the first time I went, and Dylan was a bit younger then, and he said to me, Dad, so you're going to Florida? Does that mean you're going to Universal Studios? And I said, no, I'm not, son. On the last day, I was very kindly invited to Universal Studios. And then, of course, there's pictures of Mum and Dad doing all the things that they're like, doing. All, yeah, no, we promised him we wasn't. So you can imagine how that went down. Yeah, but no, socially, though, joking aside, social, mate. So, for example, in those moments, like you said, where you are stuck in a bar till 3 a.m., terrible as it is, shocking, in that moment, you are building more international relationships and social, I believe social reef meets are absolutely fundamental for people. You never gain this from chat rooms or even this now. You never gain it until it's face to face, dear. So.
And Chad, sorry, go on, you go first. Sorry.
I was just going to say those interactions, those personal interactions, shaking hands, pounding fists, giving hugs, chatting with somebody and, rubbing shoulders. For me, for our company, those are huge because we gain more trust in people when we meet them in person. It's like a lot of the people who we call product ambassadors that tend to talk a lot about our products on our behalf. They've been using our products long before they even, became ambassadors for us. And I prefer to meet them all in person. I don't want to have an ambassador I've never met in person. And for you guys to come to the show and meet me in person was huge because we are incredibly critical of any distributor from any other country coming in and saying, that we want to distribute your products. It takes a lot for us to get to trust those folks.
I know. I think we had a year's trial, didn't we? I think, and then we sat down in front of Lynn and Nancy and it was like being sat in front of the head mistress. No, it wasn't like that.
It's the same thing for me.
But I know that we had to conform and we had to make sure we were doing Reef Nutrition a good service and I think that's how trust was built. But of course, without that face-to-face interaction, if I just wrote you an email and said, I fancy selling some of your stuff in the UK, chances are that we probably would never be where we are now with it. So. But I'm very grateful that we got the opportunity to sell such a great range of products. There's so many products out there. But there is only one Reef Nutrition as far as I'm concerned. So and perhaps we'll go into a bit more of those products in a minute. But you want to go back to the chat? I think someone else.
I was just going to say around mental health, what the show does support. It's a charity event. So once we've covered our costs, the rest of the money goes towards Mind, which is a mental health charity in the UK, and this is the 4th year. So as we know, there's a clear link, or there's a link between fish keeping and mental health. So we stumbled across that just by chance. So we support that. So there is a thread really from the hobby into mental health. I think
just to give you an idea, Chad, Paul and that is put now. I think we're up to, is it 14? Is it £10,000 plus my money?
Yes.
So £10,000 plus 4,000 that was raised at Coral Freaks at Reefing Audience with. I know 2 of your good friends, Pat and Trina from Canada. They were with us, and I've spent time with them. I know them well. And there was others over here, but we raised £4,000 off the back of a raffle that the trade over here, the industry, supported wholeheartedly. We had, I think it was £3,000 worth of raffle prizes, and we put 3,000 off, just over £4,000 back into it. Paul raised from Love to Reef in total now about 10,000, and Paul's company's very good because whatever Paul raises, they add a little bit more money to it as well, up to £500. So we've tried these little shows, as I said, are as much about a social reef meet as anything else, So
absolutely,
I totally agree about that aspect of stress reduction with having an aquarium. I met with a military combat vet that came to a show that said his psychologist, his social worker, recommended he get an aquarium. And he put that aquarium in his bedroom, and he said after he put that aquarium in his bedroom, he could fall asleep at night without medication.
Yeah.
I was like, that's huge.
It couldn't have been one that I designed because it would have been too noisy.
No. Hey, sometimes white noise is good, you know.
Yeah, sometimes white noise is good.
You kind of end up blanking it out, don't you?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm so used to that, hearing pumps and bubbling. Things bubbling is loud. You know,
and
when you notice when those things stop, you're like, oh, what's wrong?
Oh, what's wrong?
Yeah, it's like someone's died in the room. Yeah,
exactly.
When you turn it all off to do a water change, and you think, have I gone deaf?
Yeah,
because there's absolute silence. Absolutely. Right. Okay. Thanks for that. Let's go back to the chat. So, sounds great. Well done making it happen. Thank you for that. Deborah saying she can't make this year's show, but I'll be in touch for next year. When is the Florida show on? We'll go.
April, isn't it? April the 26th to the 27th.
Yes.
Yeah.
So very worthwhile going, Deborah. It's like as Chad mentioned, you go through the Reefpalooza website. Make sure you book your hotel tickets via the Reefpalooza website because you'll get a little discount.
It's the Caribe Royale Hotel.
It's the Caribe Royale, which isn't a bad hotel. It's not a bad hotel. I've had some serious nights here.
Steve saying it's a terrible hotel.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a terrible hotel. I hope the wife's not listening. Yeah.
Jack.
I've been with Steve once. 3:30 in the morning.
There's one here about him getting lap dances.
Yeah, it was 3:30 in the morning when we finally decided, because our time zones were all out.
Yeah,
it was 3:30 in the morning, and Foxy and me were looking at our clock. We better go to bed. We've been up for 30 hours, and it was 3:30 in the morning, and we better go to bed. Guess what time? Guess what time we had to get up the next day? 7.
Nice.
Yeah. It was terrible. Yeah.
Brilliant. Harry's saying really looking forward to seeing everyone.
Brilliant, Harry, and we're looking forward to seeing you, pal.
We're going to have the stall there as well, and Chad will be with me on the stall.
Yeah.
So anyone can come over and have a chat then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then John Wright is being asked, has he got his shirt? So John is well known for his kind of Hawaiian, colourful shirts. So I don't know what the answer is for that, John. I know he's back, so maybe
I might have to up my game, see if I can beat John Wright with a dodgy shirt.
They're fantastic.
No, they are fantastic, but I'm going to go for a competition version. I might do it. I might go for it. No, I'm not saying John's shirts are dodgy, but I might get a dodgy shirt. No, don't dig me a hole. That's it. No, I didn't. No, John, don't listen to them. They're ganging up on me. Yeah.
Get the violin out.
Yeah.
And then John's saying there, can't wait for there's a live stream that usually runs every Friday night. Dong Zoo.
I'm not sure Dong Zoo. It is actually.
I don't know.
No, it's on the. Is that on the Reefers live stream, John?
Yes,
I don't. Yeah.
Network.
Do you know who Don Zoo is, Chad?
I'm familiar with that name. Yeah.
Yeah, you are. Is that in coral aquaculture? Is it or? Yeah.
Okay. Let's have it. Oh, there we go. He's got a choice. Oh, he's got a choice of 3.
All right. Okay.
We've got competition, Paul.
Okay.
There we go. We might have a prize.
We should have a prize for the. We should
best
do
dressed person or
best dressed person at Love to Reef.
I better make a note.
That's got to go in the book. The best dressed person at Love to Reef.
Is it the John Wright Award?
The John Wright Award. That's what we'll call it. The John Wright Award.
I'll wear my copepod tie.
Have you got a copepod tie?
There we go.
Oh wow!
Right, so we've got the John Wright Award for the best attire, T-shirt, that kind of thing. There we go, Johnny boy.
Yeah.
It's all planned as always.
That's it. In fact, he can give the award.
There you go, John.
Better, isn't it? Yeah.
But he won't be able to award it to himself.
No, that's fair. Then I might win.
So you might win, right? I get it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Harry won the Reef Nutrition.
Oh, yes, he did. Harry won it last year.
Good prize.
He got a good prize there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we put some product into the raffle last year, Chad. Yeah.
Awesome.
Excellent. Let's have a look. What we got here. Dodgy shirt. It's from Mark Frag.
March. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm sure March will have one.
Can I can I go matching with Joe? It'd be twins. Oh my God.
Oh no.
Here we go.
No.
Right.
Is that it for that?
That's for the. That's it from a comment perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So there's no more questions for Chad on there, I believe. We'll dive into a little bit more of the products, just to give people a bit more of a understanding, maybe. I don't know how we added the products on it. TDO, Chad. Top dressed otahimi. So
that's what it means.
So people don't realise what often a lot of people, certainly unless they're into fish breeding, won't know why this stuff.
That's what I used.
Now I've used a lot of fish food in my time, and this has been without a doubt. I mean, I've seen amphias turn around colour wise, wreck fish particularly. You know how wreck fish pale out. And they get that wishy-washy look because the wreck fish are out on the reef, darting out and feeding on copepods and shrimp species, no doubt, that are full of microalgae that we were talking about a minute ago. And that's how they're retaining their coloration. And I know where TDO is really, really beneficial is with clownfish rearing. That's where most people start with TDO, is through clownfish. And the reason being is that there is a marked difference between a clownfish that's been fed on TDO, which is top dressed otahimi, and just the aquaculture food otahimi. Yeah. So if you want to explain, Chad, what is otahimi? I know it's a Japanese product. Yeah. Explain to the viewers what otahimi is, and it's not just in ornamental aquaculture, is it?
Yeah, otahimi was so the Japanese company that we buy it from, Mirabini Nishin, I think is their name. They have been a fish food manufacturer for a long time. They get the best ingredients from their ports when these fishing vessels come in: krill, fish, squid, things like that. And what they did was they visited multiple hatcheries all over the world, working primarily with people that are breeding flounder, sea bream, and food fish, basically. And they wanted to formulate a weaning diet, a pellet, a granulated food that would have good integrity, good nutritional profile, and result in good food conversion. So the fish eats it and converts most of that food into biomass. And so hence they grow faster and they get out of that hatchery sooner, because that's the goal with any hatchery, is to grow your fish as fast as possible and get them out the door before something catastrophic happens, or you just end up spending too much money on these fish. You want them to grow fast, get them out of there, so that they don't cost too much to raise. And so otahimi came about primarily for those purposes, for fish hatcheries to wean their fish off of live feed organisms very early on. And then once that fish starts to grow, this food, otahimi, comes in a variety of sizes. So as the fish grows, this hatchery can offer it the next size up. And so with quality ingredients, good integrity, good food conversion ratio, we found this food and we were like, we need to bring this into the US, because there are fish hatcheries in the US that could use it. And not just saltwater, there are a lot of freshwater growers that are using this. A lot of people that are working with sport fish like bass and perch and bluegill, these panfish, things that are very popular as sport fish in the United States. And so we brought it in. We're the exclusive distributor of otahimi in North America, I believe. And we're very on good terms with this company. And so what we did was we were like, you know what, let's see if we can get this into the marine ornamental world. Let's see if we can help out clownfish breeders or anybody else that's working on ornamentals, because this is a really good food. I've used the food personally out in Hawaii, and it's just incredible. I've used many foods in the past, and this one was just amazing for growing fish and growing them in a healthy way. And so what we did was we decided to take the food and do something to change it, to make it a little bit better. Because with clownfish, we all know that, we want these clownfish to look very similar to their wild type counterparts. We want them to have that rich pigmentation, and we want them to grow quickly and to wean off of live foods and things like that. So we decided to get it into the clownfish industry. And what we did was we top dressed it with an algae that's rich in that carotenoid, astaxanthin, and this circles back to the carotenoids. Carotenoids are incredibly good for pigmentation enhancement, especially in the Ocellaris and the Percula clownfish. And so clownfish breeders started using it, and they were selling their fish to local stores, and those local stores had fish from other breeders or wild caught fish, or from other breeders that weren't using the TDO, and they were looking at them, and there was this huge difference. They were like, what is going on here? You know, these breeders that aren't using TDO, their clownfish are kind of pale. There's some of them look almost brownish or yellow. And then they're seeing these fish fed on TDO, and they're like, wow, these actually look like they're wild caught. What are you feeding them? And what are you feeding them started becoming the primary question that these people kept hearing. And that's kind of where TDO got its start. And then what we did was we had Virginia Tech, a university in the United States, do a study on that carotenoid content, because we wanted to perfect the content. We weren't sure if we were adding too little or too much. And so they did this great study. They had all these undergrad minions do all these replicates and all this science. And they helped us dial in the concentration of astaxanthin that we should have in our formula, which we state on the package. It's 400 parts per million. And so that's kind of what took TDO to the next level. And so what happened was is hobbyists, people that aren't breeding fish, started using it. And they were like, this is amazing food. We want to buy it too. And so we had to work on packaging, making it, smaller packaging.
So it went from
that isn't necessarily,
it went from the big ones like this for serious people, which is a lot of money, this one, right, to these little ones, isn't it?
To these pour spout packages.
That's the ones I use.
And the packaging has evolved. This is very unique packaging in the industry, because what we wanted was protecting the nutritional viability, the nutritional value of this food. It's always paramount to us in everything we do. We want your animals to consume this food and get the nutrition from it that we know that's in it. And so what we did was we went with Mylar packaging, which prevents gas exchange. We add a moisture absorber to every package and an oxygen absorber. And then this little bitty pour spout prevents a lot of atmospheric oxygen from getting in, because oxygen is bad for food. It's bad for fish food. So this isn't your jar of food. This isn't a jar of flake food or pelleted food. This packaging is intentional. It's very deliberate that we did it this way, because we want this food to be protected. We want it to be as fresh it is on day one as 365 days later. And so that's that's something that we started bringing into the hobby. And boy, did we have a rough time cracking into the hobby, because there's so many flake foods and pelleted foods out there. It is absurd how many people make these foods. And for all I know, these flake foods are all coming from the same factory in China. Who knows?
Just another brand on the pot.
They just put their label on it and done. So what we did was we have this rule that we only brick and mortar stores are allowed to retail our products. And we had to make an exception for TDO. So we went to some of the big online guys. We got it into Bulk Reef Supply. And Bulk Reef Supply started selling it. They started using it. Some of their employees were already using it. And they were like, this stuff is amazing. They were getting great feedback from their customers. It got best in show for a new product in their entire line of new products for the year of, I think it was 2021 or 2020 or something like that, maybe before that. And then suddenly stores wanted to start picking it up. And so it started taking off from there, getting bigger and bigger, and now we're looking to get it into freshwater.
One of the interesting things, because there was obviously over the years, I've worked in all the different aspects of the industry, particularly in the koi industry and what have you, and a lot of I think it's wrong to use the word color enhancer, isn't it? It's not a color enhancer. Can you say, is it Hemiocotis algae? Or how do you say it?
I say Hematococcus.
I can't say it.
Who knows?
Hematococcus.
It's a really unusual species of algae that I presume is found in the wild in shrimps or something. Is it where they've took it out? How does it get into the natural food chain, and how have you Because I've seen the evidence. So, I told you about a guy called Jason that breeds all the clownfish for TMC, and they were bringing in Taiwanese clownfish fry that were pretty dim and boring. And then all of a sudden, Jason's producing these super fluorescent clownfish, but they're not enhanced in colour. You're just bringing out the natural pigmentation that is already there, isn't it? Yeah. It's not an enhancing. Like in some of the koi food packaging, it always goes on about this will enhance the colours, but there's no such thing as enhance it. We're just giving them what they really need. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing about that word Hematococcus, if you break it down, the first part of it, hemato or heme, is basically blood.
Like hemoglobin,
hemocytometer, hemoglobin, that means blood, and coccus is that spherical shape. And so what's interesting about this about Hematococcus is that when it's grown in like a laboratory under like regular lights, it's green. But when you expose it to UV irradiation, to direct sunlight, it starts to produce this carotenoid called astaxanthin, and that's what makes it turn red. A lot of this stuff is grown in the Atacama Desert in Chile, and so that's
the dry. Is that right? The driest place on Earth, the Atacama Desert. Is that right? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, and so what makes this species of algae so unique is it stores a whole lot of this carotenoid, and so it's very useful as a top dressing component. And then when these fish eat it, not only does it enrich coloration in all fish, especially clowns and like flame angels, but for breeders, this carotenoid gets into the eggs. It goes directly into the eggs of the females, and acts as an antioxidant, and just it helps with the overall robustness of those embryos when they hatch into larvae. And so there's just so many good things about it.
Is it a marine species then? I know you said it's growing in the Atacama Desert, but it's a freshwater species?
Yeah.
Really? I thought there was a marine species. So out on the reef then, if we relate back to the reef, there will be the clownfish out on the reef, no doubt grabbing a little bit of plankton or a shrimp or something, which must be very, very similar properties to the hema algae, as I call it. I'm now just calling it hema algae. It's easier. Yeah, Hemococcus algae. So there must be something very, very similar out on the reef that behaves in the same way, that's feeding the shrimps the clownfish are eating. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The zooplankton that are drifting around on the reef and in the open water and crawling around on surfaces, they're eating phytoplankton, and a lot of those phytoplankton have their own pigment constituents, and those are also helping to keep those fish nice and colored up. So yeah, diet is huge when it comes to our fish and corals, as a lot of us know.
Yeah. What I found about TDO, because I was searching around it for quite a while, because it wasn't really in the UK, to feed to the clownfish because they wasn't laying eggs. And it could be a coincidence. I found some on eBay, then I bought it. And then within a couple of months of feeding, they started laying eggs. It could be, I can't put it down to that, but it was the only thing that changed was the food, because I had read it on more forums in the US than in the UK about people. I joined a couple of groups that were around breeding clownfish, and they all used TDO.
Yeah.
So I was desperate to get it because they were having results of it, not just in the fry, but in the pairing. The breeding pair.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some breeders that's all they feed to their broodstock is TDO. That's it. They don't feed them anything else.
Well, we use it as soon as we've weaned our wild fish in store from frozen diet. Usually starts sometimes with an import. If I brought an import in, then they'll be fed on live brine that's been enriched with a bit of RG complete. Yeah. And then ultimately we'll wean them over. And one of the nice things is that because normally you're limited by a manufacturer normally to one or two sizes of pellet. But the nice thing is, of course, you get, like this one, the large one is good for sort of like a medium sized fish. And then if you're feeding like, this one extra small, which is ideal for something like a little, like a juvenile, like a 6-line wrasse or something with a tiny mouth. So you get such a range of sizes. I think how many sizes?
There's five.
Yep. Yeah, that's something that adds to the versatility. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
clownfish breeders love it because of those sizes. The first size is like a powder. It's
Yeah.
essentially the same size as a rotifer, intentionally.
Right.
It's
Ah.
250
That's
micron, 0.25
Good for the
millimeter.
fry, isn't it? So
Yeah.
you start
Yeah,
off with the
and that's,
Yeah.
you know,
and then
they're-
you wean them up to the bigger pellet. So
Yeah.
exactly.
I've seen
And-
where Chad out in the States. It's not really took off over here, but I know that out in, I don't know what shop it was or what firm I saw, but there was a shop or a business in the States I was watching. They're specifically using it now as their target coral food. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and so some people started buying the powdered form, and they're like, look, I'm feeding this to my corals and they are responding quite well. And so now we have people that they don't even they don't buy the TDO to feed it to their fish, they buy it to feed it to their corals.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
That
there's
was
profitability.
something. Yeah, that was something I should imagine that you never imagined would happen. Is it? It was just that
Yeah.
some people, just have took it on their own direction, and
We
Yeah.
have so many of those stories.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a guy that's breeding dart frogs in North Carolina, and
Right.
he reached out to us. He's like, this stuff is tadpole superfood. He's like, there are so many brands out there that claim to, have tadpole pellets or foods. He's like, none of them come close to this. So he's going
Wow.
to start selling it with his tadpoles to his customers. And I was
Right.
completely blown away by that.
wow, wow.
You're going to have a new packet with
really-
frogs
yeah.
on it.
No,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The TDO amphibian. Yeah.
Yeah, dark frog.
We had the
And-
customer
yeah.
come in. He was doing goldfish fry. Wasn't
Oh
he?
yeah, goldfish.
He was
We've
buying
got
the
a
A pellet.
We've got we've
Yeah.
got a top drawer Ranchu goldfish breeder in the UK he's banging to his goldfish. I mean, these guys are like serious. I mean, and he's rearing all of his Ranchu on TDO.
Yeah. Get it into the hands of any freshwater breeder you can, because I have heard some stories and seen pictures of like flower horn before and after pictures, the ornamental shrimp, and I've heard from people that are doing goldfish. They're like, people can't believe what they're seeing. They can't believe that this is like a natural thing that they can do for their fish.
Wow.
Yeah, I suppose it's all because, again, I suppose that's part of one of the vital elements of, so this UV protection or this conversion from green out, where it goes green to red, and that, I suppose goldfish have a lot of orange pigmentation and similar. So should we have a little look? We're going to the chat. Let's have a look.
Absolutely. So John says, got two friends are coming down to see you on Sunday, Harry and Carl.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
cool.
Dave has joined us. Hi, Dave. Hope you're well.
Hi, Dave.
Oh, just one thing. Back to John a minute.
Oh.
Just let your two pals know there'll be a full team on this weekend, but Angela and I are going
To
the frozen north.
Oh, yes,
We're going up north.
yes.
We're going somewhere near Manchester, I believe.
You're going Rochdale.
I'm going to make sure that I've got a ski jacket.
we're going to Wee Reef.
Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
to Wee
So
Reef,
anyone wants to
Eye
go,
Reef.
we
So,
can see you
so
there.
if you want to say hello, Angela and I are popping in to see go and pop in to see Andy and the boys at Eye Reef this weekend. So
Excellent.
yeah, so there'll be Barry will be on, Connor will be on, Dylan will be there, all the rest of the team will be there. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Steve Fox, TDO is definitely one of the best foods I've ever used.
Only
Very
because
impressed.
he tries punching it off me for free. That's why. Yeah. Go on in.
Oh dear. Clowns plus TDO equals brilliance.
Yeah.
That's
And the answer to that is yes, because we touched upon that about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think Amphias is a definite, without a doubt. Amphias and tea. Once you've
there's
weaned,
a small pellets as well, aren't
pink
they?
longfins and wreckfish particularly. Yeah, they really respond
So
well.
coming
to
on to the next one, because
TDO and roe is good for
Yeah.
the Amphias roe.
quite often,
roe, very good. The fish eggs,
Yes.
very good. Yeah.
quite often with Amphias, you feed multiple times a day. So would you use TDO in an auto feeder?
Yep.
Bear in mind, you said about
Well,
in the packet.
Chad, are we allowed to say? Because I think Neptune, is that right? Neptune Systems, did they choose your...
the crossover diet. Yeah.
Right, so Neptune, not many people will know in the UK, but over in the US, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but I knew. But ultimately, the food that Neptune released for their auto feeders, which they called, what was it?
Crossover diet.
Was actually TDO.
Yeah, and our logo's on the back of their packaging. It's
is it?
totally transparent. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So so there are manufacturers out there choosing TDO particularly for their own food. Put it this way, there ain't much better. So some of them are choosing it as well.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And you find with some pellets they can all gunk up
Yeah,
and stuff
see-
like that, and you cause problems. Whereas
with the auto feed, you choose the right size pellet for the
Yes.
auto feeder.
yeah, absolutely.
You'd be surprised by who's using it. I can't reveal my customer base, but you would be surprised.
Yeah.
You'd be
There's a lot of other firms out there using it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no secret that it's really good. It's
Yeah,
not like,
yeah.
somebody's
It
don't
is really
feed out anything. It's garbage.
John Wright saying he makes his own frozen food.
Well, that's good too.
Yeah, absolutely. Balanced diet, enriched.
Yeah.
My sister, who is a nutritionist, use it as an antioxidant.
What's
Absolutely.
that? Well, she eats it.
The
No,
astaxanthin astaxanthin's a popular nutraceutical. It's in all kinds of vitamins and things you can take.
Oh, I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Harry, for that.
So we're not saying she eats
TDO.
No.
Chad,
we don't want to
Chad, if I eat this, will I go orangey reddy colour?
You might get a little tint.
I could do it because Julian Sprung, and then they'll take the piss out of me. They call me Casper over in America.
Right.
You know that, didn't you?
Yeah, you need some
So
It would make your hue more rich.
would it really?
Yeah.
So it may turn me from Casper back to
Well, there you go. An Oompa Loompa.
You know what it was? When I went to Florida, I had a pair of shorts on, and the first thing Tony Vargas said to me was, he said, "You're something like, hey, you're either the Milky Bar kid or you're Casper." And he told Julian Sprung, and I said to him, I said, "I've never really met Julian." I said, I said, "Can you also? I'd like to meet Julian." So he rang him up and he said to him, "There's a crazy English guy coming to see you. Just refer to him as Casper." And he literally, as I walked up to the stall, he must have just known it would be me. He put his hand out. He went, "Hello, Casper."
It's a great icebreaker.
Yeah. So maybe I need more TDO for when I'm wearing shorts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for people who are pigmentally challenged. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I like that one. Don't worry. I'm sure Steve LeMay in the chat there will remember that. Pigmentally challenged. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for that, Harry. Brilliant.
That's a good comment.
So I use the small fat extra, so extra small.
Yeah,
for
extra
feeding
small.
corals.
Yeah.
Will do.
Yeah, just see Barry or Dylan for a cup of tea, John. You'll be well there for your friends. They'll look after them.
Yeah, nice one. Polymate is talking about just getting the next Pico 3D print done. Use this time to work on aquarium design stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. There you go. Speaking of Robin's son, I'm nearly out. And of course, you're going to see him tomorrow, aren't you? Saturday. Is that a prompt?
Oh God, I'm already. Do you know I'm going up north, and I've had a request for an aquarium, and a request for this thing, and a request. My car is rammed.
A reef casa.
Could well be. Yeah,
and
but
you're bringing some stuff back from Steve, but we can't say what it is.
We can't.
Do you know that?
I am apparently.
Right,
yeah, I didn't realise it. Yes, we are. Yeah.
I've agreed it with Steve.
Yeah, he's basically. I'm bringing stuff back as well. I'm going up north. Yeah, we're going up for a fully loaded car. Yeah. Roe, actually, that's a good point. Roe for me. If I didn't get any out. But Chad, I have to say, the number one. I mean, I love a bit of oyster. I use that around the farm and what have you, and a bit of Phyto feast here and there. But for me, mate, that roe, that is something else. I mean, we use it in the main display. I haven't found a fish that doesn't like it yet. I don't know. Actual fact, I would say it's primarily for me. It's more of a fish food than targeted as a coral food. Yeah. Again, I'm using. Do you know what I managed to wean onto that? Tucaramphias. You know how problematic tucas are.
No, that's
Yeah, you know what tucaramphias? They're the purple ones. You know
the
purple queens.
Yeah.
They are the most notoriously difficult amphia of all. So, so this is what I did. I got a few in once from the Philippines, and I managed mainly, and they came in at a good size. They weren't too large because sometimes they come too big. And then I managed to get them into quite a high flow aquarium. And at first I was feeding a bit of like live brine, and they weren't that interested in it. I couldn't figure out, it's not many fish that won't take live brine at first, yeah. So I chucked in some roe, increased the flow, yeah, and of course the eggs are spinning because they're semi-buoyant, aren't they? The eggs managed to hover in the water just like they would in the plankton, and I was spinning them around the aquarium, and that I managed to wean purple queens using roe. Now that's pretty special.
Wow.
Because they're a notoriously difficult fish. I'd say 50% of them usually die for most people, at least. But I found roe particularly good for really seriously difficult species like pencil wrasse when they first arrive as well. So I know it's marketed as a coral food, but again, like the TDO being used to rear frogs, I would say the roe is more about fish than it is about corals, really.
Yeah,
very, very good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I even know people that have gotten, you know, garden eels to eat it, and public aquariums use it, and so
yeah, brilliant stuff. Superb. Yeah,
excellent. We could not bring in crossover at the time, unfortunately.
Yeah, true. Yeah, yeah. Because by the way, Steve Fox, Chad, he distributes Neptune in the UK.
Oh,
so.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, of course. And I hear Trump 2 pounds of tea.
You can't do anything without hearing that guy's name. Yeah, it's not the Cheeto dust that they put on it. It's TDO.
Yeah. Can you put some arsenic in it? I won't mention.
No,
don't go there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No comment. I'm going to Florida next week. I better behave myself. Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for the stream. I will get down again soon.
I've just figured out who that is actually. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So he's saying.
What's he saying?
You can tell people for me it is a
It's
done
a done
deal.
I know what he's referring to. He's doing to you're smuggling. You're getting me to do.
Yes.
That's what he's
But
referring.
I don't know exactly
I've got
what
to
he's...
smuggle stuff for you, but I don't know what's in the bag. That doesn't sound good, Paul.
To the show.
Oh, I see. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't.
All right.
I don't know 100% what you're talking about, Steve.
I think it's to do with, like you said, prizes or something like that. Yeah.
So I'm not too sure. I wasn't going to announce it tonight.
No, we're going to save that one for the next stream, Foxy. Maybe we'll get you on. Oh, there we go. Jamie Craggs. There you go.
For Tuca.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the most difficult species of all.
So do you find with Tucas and those, once you get them through the first X number of days and weeks, you can wean them onto other stuff, and then they're easier to
yes, absolutely
to keep.
Absolutely, to 100%. So, for example, one thing I will say, without blowing too much smoke up Reef Nutrition's bum, once you've got them on it, that's it. You're done. If you can get a fish to eat it in the first, chances are that fish will survive. If it's a really finicky fish or really difficult fish, you can get them on that. You're home and dry.
They come through the process, so they're quite empty. They're quite weak. So if you don't get them feeding them in that short period of time, they're in a downward spiral.
I don't know if it's actually true, but a purple queen or tuca, as Steve said there, a purple queen's stomach is the same size as its eye, and there's a reason for that. On the reef, they need to be lightweight, sprint out of a coral, straight out into the water column. They need to grab the food straight back into their coral, because otherwise they're going to get eaten by a trevally. So they need to hurry up, get out. So they're like,
they develop
so they're like
speeds and therefore less weight.
I think even the nose, if you look at a purple queen's nose, it's slightly pointed. It's all about aerodynamics. They're like rockets firing out of a coral, and of course they need to get back really quick. So they don't want to be carrying too much in their stomach.
So therefore it needs to be small enough,
but
appetizing enough, and little and often.
Yeah, and so in other words, that purple queen amphia may come out of the coral head probably every 2 or 3 minutes all day and back again while the sun's up. So they don't.
So that's a lot of food,
but they're not. What they're eating on the reef is lower protein, but lots of it.
Yeah.
So if you can wean them onto something like TDO or roe,
you're still talking 7-8 feeds a day.
Yeah, at first you would be, but once you've got them onto it, probably 3 or 4 feeds a day would be enough for a tuca or a purple queen amphia.
Once you get it,
But other amphia species are much easier to wean. That is probably one of the most difficult.
And so here's another one. TDO for copperbaits.
I've never tried it. I doubt it
They're a
because there's
difficult
very
breed,
specific. But I don't know whether Chad's got any stories. I don't think so. I think that's more of a mastic based or a paste type thing that would
So
work.
be the texture.
But you could put TDO within the mastic, which I've done before.
Yeah,
you get the gel paste and then put it in the mastic.
Yeah, I know people that have gotten the orange spotted filefish to eat TDO that way.
We've got them in store now, Chad.
Yeah,
There's a gentleman that's normally in the chat called Peter Newson. I know he's bought TDO.
I've seen. I mean, it's tank.
But we weaned only a week ago. We got some of the Fijian orange spot files, which I find much hardier than all the other ones that we've had in previous decades. And we've already got them onto. Is it C1 or C2? I think it's C2 with So
C2.
C2 is the grading.
Oh, so it's TDO, but the grading of the product, right?
But B1 and B2, which is just really fine dust
for clownfish rearing.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you got the pellets got extra small.
Yeah.
Medium, large.
So usually it's written somewhere. I can't remember where it's written. It's extra small, but that has another name. What's extra small, Chad? Again,
C1.
C1.
C1, and we wanted to change it because the hobbyists have no clue what C1 or C2.
No,
is.
That's why I asked the question. I'm thinking, what the hell are we talking about?
Sorry, it's a term when we all.
It's part of the industry, love it.
Yeah, it's an industry terminology, so we've simplified it
for a Luddite like me as a
for a Luddite. Yeah.
Oh my God! But yeah, I know some people that have fed it to copper bands and they eat it. I mean, I know people that have fed it to garden eels and they've eaten it. So it's not impossible, but it's not common.
Yeah, it's all about. I'll never forget meeting an actual coarse fisherman. And they said, one of the things about coarse fishing, I'm told, is it's all about bait presentation. So as I explained there with the roe, with the eggs, I don't turn pumps off. When I feed my fish, I don't turn pumps off. Right? Some people do. Right? But I think that's silly, depending on the species. If it's a mandarin, I might do.
I always used to a mandarin.
But the flow... Right, is what obviously fish will react to something moving in the water. So I think it's important to have it's fundamental to have good water flow when we're feeding the fish. Tigger feast the copper bands might eat tigger feast. They might do tigger feast.
Yeah, you should give that a go.
I like the idea of TDO in with a mastic.
Yeah, baking up paste. I've done it before. Even when you get down to the bottom of a tub of flake food and you got all that dust in the bottom, put that into something like a gel paste, like mastic or something, and then mix it in. You can add a few more pellets to it. You can maybe even add some little bits of mussel in it as well, and make up a paste, and then stick it in a shell or a cockling shell.
Would love that.
Ideally with a small hole, so your other fish don't eat it all. Yeah. And then you can try and wean that. I mean, Johnny from Aquaprint, he makes butterfly feeders. Maybe Harry does. He does 3D printing on the thing. But Johnny Aquaprint makes these lovely little things with a magnet on that you stuff the food into.
So they can get it in.
So the copper band can get their nose in.
So that helps the fairly slow eaters, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right, so a couple more comments, and then we're nearly out of time. I believe that amphias also have a small throat to their mouth size.
I don't know that one, Steve. I only ever heard about the statement about the stomach on a tuca. I don't know if it's true with all amphias, but a tuca, reason what makes them really difficult is, like I said, they are the super athlete of the amphias. And same with Evansii as well. They're very similar as well. So they need to... They don't have they've literally got to be like an athlete. They can't have too much food in their belly when they're working hard on the reef,
Yeah. So I suppose this one is TDO the go-to general use. So I suppose broadcast feeding really, isn't it, is what we're saying. So for all types of fish.
I mean, you can use it. You can use it for all types of fish. I mean, I'm sure Chad would agree with me. I mean, I know there are people that specifically only use TDO for their clownfish rearing and things like that. But I still believe that as much as TDO is the most amazing product I've ever used, I'm sure Chad would agree. A varied diet of everything, is a good thing, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't matter what we talk about. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, I feed it alongside our liquid suspension feeds every day. I'll mix some roe, some arctopods, some beta brine with the TDO, and I know hobbyists that's all they feed to their fish. But it's whether they're tangs, these so-called herbivores, which, most saltwater fish are opportunistic in the end. But yeah, it's yeah, you want to keep providing that variety for sure.
Actually, that's a really good thing, Chad, just said there, because I probably think all like you just by a comment you made there. So I don't actually believe there are any true herbivorous fish, really, because I know that African cichlids, Mabuna, for example, in the Rift Lakes, they're grazing on algae, and I believe the German term for it is afwoks that live within the algae, copepods, and other species live within the algae. They're grazing the algae. As they're grazing the algae, they're eating animals, so they're not really a herbivore anymore. Would you agree? There's not really any, even tangs, hence why tangs pick up worms as well within the algae. There is, parasitic worms, but there's also other animal life within the algae as well, isn't there? So is there such a thing as a true herbivore?
So I
wonder.
It's their base food that they need. And
I mean, even cows eat bugs, don't they, when they're grazing on grass? So. So
yeah, I mean, you can raise seahorses on freshwater mysis. So
yeah, true. Yeah.
Okay. Right, we're nearly coming to the end.
I think we have.
Comment there. I don't have my filter on all the time anymore. I've run it 2 hours, 1 hour on, 11 hours off. Leave the wave maps to keep it going around till something takes it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, exactly what we were saying. This is about maintaining circulation, but as such, it depends on the species and the size of the system and what animals are in it. But in general, on an average mixed reef, I don't see the point about turning pumps to feed mode. I think it's a waste of time. But that's just me. That's my point of view. But I haven't got time to turn a pump off and turn it on again, or I'll forget. So.
Okay.
Right. So I think that's it. I think we've covered most things there. Chad, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come and specifically come and meet you at Love to Reef. For those of you that obviously missed it, they can watch it back, and we usually find we get quite a few people watch the following day. But thank you to everybody that's been in the chat, and to Chad and Paul. We're really looking forward to Love to Reef.
Yeah, should be brilliant.
And to find out more about Paul's new tank too. He's not telling anyone. But that could be the next episode.
Yeah. Okay, guys, if you're at Wee Reef, we'll see you there.
Yes.
If not, we'll see you at
See you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Chad, thank you so much, Chad. Thank you very much, pal.
Thank you guys so much, and thanks to everybody that was attending today. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye for
you.
now.
All right, bye for now.